Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and good morning for the person I'm interviewing today. And for those who will be watching us on a replay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And my name is Marilyn. I'm the founder and CEO of Customized Training Solutions Private Limited, or CTS, and we are passionate about helping leaders and organizations who are continuous learners and action takers to transform and thrive in all aspects by co creating customized solutions or programs with our world class resources. We have served over 3,000 leaders from over 30 countries in different industries, including Petronas, Sony Mobile, ProLife UK, Ayala Group, Chevron, Tencent, Jollibee Foods Corporation, and Shell, to name a few. And this is the reason why we're organizing several interventions, including this interview, is to help leaders who don't know how to stay relevant and adapt in the next normal, those who find it stressful to lead and ensure performance of a remote team, and for those who are afraid that they cannot keep their team or their business. So join us in every um, chances that you have to to have or join us in this kind of interview and other interventions that we organize. And it's my great pleasure for today to introduce our leader, John Farrell. He's an international traveler residing in Europe, America, and Asia for the last 30 years. He worked in hospitality, business training, and personal development. He's a business coach and a clean language trainer, working on motivational therapy with clients to uncover real motivators. And he worked as well for 10 years in Myanmar as it opened to the world. So, personal development has shown him the flaws and how to get the best out of the people that he is training. And what they need really is to train them to live and train and treat them to stay, as per the quote from Richard Branson as well. So without so much further ado, I'd like to bring in John. Hi, John.
Hi, Marilyn. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking, and I hope it's the same for you.
I'm great as well, but it's early in the morning here. It's 8 a.m. in the UK. I know it's late afternoon for you, so
Yes.
it's good for me, better for you.
Yes, yes, true, true. It's good to have a warm, sunny day today. It's been raining for a while in Singapore as well, and yeah, I'm so excited to learn from you, especially on the space of leadership and learning, and so I will jump right into the question. But for those who are new in our platform or watching us today, just to the reason why I put the questions in this way, the 8 questions I put together, is that I'd like them to have a better understanding and perspective, um and to know the perspective that where you're coming from. That's the first 3 questions, and then I would say the juicy or the meaty part of the conversation would be the 4 to 6, and the 7 to 8 questions are really difficult open questions, I would say, which I would normally call the Miss Universe questions. So let's jump right into the questions. So for the first question, or I mean for the first statement, I'm gonna bring in front is I wanted to understand better, like for you to share with us your leadership experience, and probably if you have influencers that you'd like to share with us, and if you do also have a favorite leadership style that you would like to share, feel free to do so.
Thank you, Marilyn. It's breakfast time here, so excuse me if I keep drinking my tea. No, I'm really excited to be here with you and share some of my experiences. I think, as you said, I'm from New Zealand, and that was 30 years ago. And living, traveling, working overseas in different cultures in different countries changes your perspective, changes your experiences, changes the way you look at the world. And I've been really lucky in some of the positions I've held around the world in leadership, management, and training and management as well, to
Mhm.
meet some quite incredible people. And I could say Richard Branson was one of my sort of influences, because I think For me, I always remember the story of Richard Branson when he bought Virgin Air on, and had to get FAF approval, and when the engines broke down, and that was it. We wouldn't know what Virgin Atlantic was today if that had it carried on. And he said to the engineers, he said, "We're screwed." And one of them said, "Well, I've got a mate in the other airline across there, and I think they've got a spare engine." So they went over, they talked to him, they brought it in, they got the plane flying, and today we heard Virgin Airlines. The point there is that because Richard Branson could talk to his guys, they were in the business with him. They weren't employees. They were actually in the business with him. They found the solution for him.
Mm-hmm.
And we know who he is. That engineer is probably still working there, but we don't know who he is. And I think Richard Branson epitomizes that leadership, which is inclusive. And I think in my life, I've met some incredible people who were leading without the actual training. I think a lot of leadership for me is just who you are. You can learn the technical stuff of how to interview people and how to make sure that their tax is being paid and that sort of HR stuff. But it's really the social interaction. And I think a great example of that today is the empowerment and the movement in women in business, and how they're starting to come to the fore, because people are, they're going to work better for leaders who include them. And this doesn't need to be the Richard Bransons of the world. This can be, I think, one of the managers, the leaders that I've worked with was on a boat. I used to run and work on super yachts, so 200, 300-foot yachts. And one of the captains on there, I worked with a few captains, but only one of them really stood out. And on a boat, you work really hard, and you're doing 7-day weeks, 18-hour days. It's hard work.
Wow.
But then he made sure that when we had downtime, we had downtime. It wasn't like sort of like, it's still working, but not only doing 6-hour days. Um, so yeah, leaders are not necessarily the people that have written books. They can be sort of the person you're working with. So, and I could tell you lots of stories about leaders that just didn't quite match up. Yeah, there's a few of those around as well. I think there's a balance.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing with us your experience. I mean, like what you've said, it's different when you actually are able to travel around the world, because that means you're able to not only learn but actually lead people from different culture, different beliefs, and that way you have to balance as well, like what you've said, you shared with us, and you've mentioned here as well, Richard Branson, which is someone who I look up as well, because of how, how he treats his employees as well, and how he believes in training at the same time, in and I was actually reading several statistics on this employee engagement earlier, and part of that is really to having learning and development and career development within the organization as top of the things that they are looking for, to stay within that organization. And yeah, so thank you so much for sharing that. And that leads me to my next question, based on your experience and what you shared. What is leadership for you?
Leadership for me, leadership is there's different aspects, different facets to leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that's a buzzword at the moment is the growth mindset. And I think this can be taken the wrong way. Growth mindset. Leadership is not about learning the next thing or doing the next course. It's actually not the effort. It's the mindset. And Malcolm Gladwell's comment in his book, I can't remember the book, but he has a 10,000 hour rule. If you work at something for 10,000 hours, you'll become an expert in it. That's rubbish. A growth mindset is rubbish if you don't step back and what I like to say is smell the roses. And I always thought for years, and a big thing now is how many books as the leaders do they read? And Bill Gates reads these books, and Warren Buffett reads these other books, and I've come to realize that real leaders for me are the ones that they've read those books, but then they apply it. They don't go to the
Exactly.
classes, they don't read the books, they actually take what they've learned and they apply it. You can't do something for 10,000 hours and become an expert in it. You've actually got to apply it. So it's not the effort, it's actually becoming engrossed in it, sharing it. And this is what I'm saying about real leaders being inclusive, getting people on board with them. I think for me, the metaphor that I would use is I'm from New Zealand. So if you know anything about New Zealand, you'll know about the All Blacks, the New Zealand rugby team. And 2007, they got to a state where, I mean, they've always been in the top two or three rugby teams in the world. They got to 207, they were eliminated in the quarterfinals. They were already one of the top teams. Well, what could they do? Go away and try harder, put more effort in? Well, yeah, they still would have been one of the sort of top two or three teams in the world. They changed their mindset. They realized that they had the effort. They had to do something else as well. And they started, this is rugby. And if you know anything about rugby, it's a physical game. Um, but they stepped back and they realized that they needed to go into personal development, start to develop more vulnerability, start to share leadership. So they stepped back and they looked at what they were doing. It wasn't more training, it was actually who they are as a person. And the quote from the All Blacks at that stage was, "Better people make better All Blacks." They changed the dynamic of who they were as people. And if you know anything about the All Blacks, since then they've gone on. They're back-to-back winners of the World Cup. They've won the accolades for being the best sports team in the world in 2011, I think it was 2012. So they didn't put more effort in. They changed what they were doing. And interestingly, here it was personal development. I think a really good book, if I can give a book recommendation for business, is Legacy, the story of the evolution of the All Black rugby team. I can't remember who wrote it. But yeah, for me, leadership isn't just effort. It's actually stepping back and smelling the roses, reading the books, but actually then putting it into practice, doing something with it. That's my
Exactly.
definition.
Wow. I love how you defined it. Not only the growth mindset, which is, of course, mindset is everything. It all, starts there, and probably like all the growth that you will see and all the progress that you will see in any person or in business is definitely around, because of the mindset that you have, right? Like in business, they say it's 95% mindset and 5% strategy. So I love that you've shared and first and foremost highlighted that, as your definition of leadership, which is growth mindset. And most importantly, that, even if you have the knowledge, but if you don't apply it, then it doesn't make sense, right? Yeah, so thank you
Absolutely.
so much for sharing and for reminding the viewers or the listeners today that, it's all about taking action. I mean, or applying whatever you've learned. And for my conversations as well with leaders and L&D, especially L&D practitioner or learning and development practitioners, I've always, hear that challenge of how can we actually bridge, knowledge with application. And
Yep.
that is because, like, or there are like even on the negative side that they would say like, oh, it didn't work for us, NLP did not work for us. Imagine that. John. And it's like, wow, I mean, successful people like Oprah, Tony Robbins, and other, you've talked about sports as well earlier, and like, a lot of the top athletes are actually using NLP, like what you've said, what the All Blacks, what they did differently, right? And that's really the mindset, that's really the, really working on, like, I would say it's NLP, right? And yeah, so before I actually move to the next question, I just wanted to acknowledge Juliet Liapis. She says, I'm also supporting the All Blacks, especially during the John Olomu days back then. Thank you. Thank you for engaging with us. Feel free to for those who are listening or watching us live, feel free to share us any of your questions or comments in the comment section as well. Oh, that reminds me, I didn't get to show what Juliet said. Yeah. So that leads me to my next question. I mean, in my introduction earlier, I've mentioned about the struggle to adapt or to stay relevant in the next normal. And here we are, we were talking about leadership, and we've made mention about really applying what you've learned. And so I'm curious to know, now that there has, I would say, a lot of changes happening in the way we work, right? So I would say there must be also different challenges that leaders are facing. So how would you define or describe the next normal, having said that?
And that's a great question. The old normal and the new normal. I think going back to the All Blacks because it's been mentioned. Um, they won back-to-back World Cups because they never stood still. They were the best in the world, but they kept changing. They kept moving. There's a saying: you're either moving forward, you're either learning, or you're dying. I don't think you're dying. You're either learning, which is growth, or the world's overtaking you.
Mm-hmm.
They say now that the people that do the best in the world will be the people that can learn, unlearn, and learn again.
Yes.
The change is it's almost mind-boggling what's happening. I mean, I grew up. I remember when I first got into computers, and I loved the computers at that stage. And believe me, this is when a mobile phone was the size of a small cat. Um, but my first programming was on a punch card. I actually had the cardboard, and you punched holes in it, and you posted it in the post off to the computer in the centre of Auckland, and then a week later they sent it back. Um, and now I'm sort of I spent the weekend producing a video
Wow.
on management and one of the areas that I'm involved in. Um, from punch cards to making videos, and I'm not a videographer. I'm a trainer. So yeah, the old normal. I think it sort of it really goes quite deep. I think what's happening, and it's really exciting. I mean, this is a fantastic time to be alive. For all the bad side of COVID and all the problems that it's created, did the world need this? Because we really needed a kick up the arse. The environment's screwed. Um, the difference between the haves and the have-nots is grown more. So if we were sitting in, it's a bit like the frog in the pot. If you put a frog in a pot of water, I don't recommend doing this at home. Put a frog in a pot of water and turn it on, the frog will boil to death because in its comfort zone it will just sit there. And that's what we were doing, and the planet around us was collapsing. Society, interaction, the capitalist system, they're all slowly sort of decaying. If you put a frog into a pot of hot water, it'll jump straight out. And I think maybe COVID's made us do that. The
True.
old normal is so long ago. What was it? You know, People are comfortable, they're happy in their comfort zone. This is where they want to stick. So, a couple of weeks or a month of COVID, and people would have gone back to the old normal, and we would have carried on like normal, like the frog in the pot of hot water being heated up. But this has been going on for too long now.
True.
And people have lost track of the old normal. And they've also had time, I think, I hope, to sit back and smell the roses and go, really, is this what I really wanted in life? And the millennials, I think one of the things I love about the millennials are they're going, no, I don't want to work for the company because, what it did to personally, my father, he worked for a company for quite a few years, and some venture capitalists bought it and broke it up because the parts were better than the company, and he lost his job. They didn't care about him. Okay, they put on courses and they made sure that he sort of got sort of a bit of support after the company closed. But basically, so millennials are going, no, what are you going to give me? So they're more looking after themselves, which is really part of what it should be. I need to look after myself, but I need to look after the people around me. And I think the new normal is a great opportunity for us to build something new. At the moment you've got this the setup for COVID is not really working. I mean, today Djokovic is either in quarantine or out of quarantine, and it's just come out of court a couple of minutes ago that he's got his visa to go to Australia, but he's unvaccinated. And if you know anything about Australia, they've been the most locked down country in the world, and where he is in Melbourne is the most locked down city in the world. But he can go there without a vaccine. So it that right or wrong, it doesn't really function properly. Um, and then part of that as well is Pfizer. Let me just bring the figures up here. Pfizer has made they're up $42 billion on last year.
Wow.
36 million, sorry, $36 billion is coming to Pfizer from COVID. So who's made money? The shareholders. You and me, who've got to pay, or we've got to pay for the vaccine, we've got to pay for the testing, we've got to sit in quarantine. It's costing us an untold amount of money, the general population. I unfortunately didn't think before COVID to buy shares in Pfizer, or I'd be laughing all the way to the bank. You know, they're up from the last 6 months. Pfizer is up 130% on their revenue. Is that fair? This is this is where the new normal is in our hands, us, the public. Is that right? The government's sort of not really understanding what to do. This it all has to change. It's been so long since the old normal. I hope, and my work now is to get people to sit down and smell the roses, wake up, and go, no, I don't need this anymore. I don't want to see these companies make billions and billions of dollars because of the hardship of the general population. The governments don't work properly. They should be serving the people, not sort of deciding what tennis players do. And I think they are, because what they did this term, the Great Resignation. Everybody's sitting back and saying, "Do I want to stay in this job? It's really paying me a wage, and that's all it's doing. I can work for myself." So there's obviously a lot of it was discontent, but now it's changed. And hopefully, the new normal will be something that actually is a new normal. It changes society, looks after the planet. I think it's quite amazing. The top six performing countries in over COVID and in reacting to COVID were all run by women: Scotland,
Wow.
Iceland, New Zealand, and I think that's an interesting statistic. Um, why? I think it's great that women are becoming much more prominent in business. And I think I read a report a while ago that the best performing companies on the Dow in the States have got a lot more women presence in the boardroom. Not enough yet, but there's obviously a difference. And why is that? And one of the predominant things I can think that it comes down to is that women are more empathic. They're more aware of the employees. They're more thinking of the social impact of what's going to happen.
Well,
That's
I
my new normal, old normal.
wow, wow. Thank you for sharing with us. I mean, it as if you have like a magic ball in front of you while you're sharing with us. And what I really like about what you've said is really like more of looking at it as an opportunity. And it's interesting that you mentioned, no, it's about time for us to wake up and see like, hey, we're not going back to the old normal. And when sometimes I would have conversations with leaders from some companies, they always like, oh, okay, we're still waiting because there's still lockdown, or oh, we're losing like some of our staff because of the attrition, or sometimes it's like, oh, okay, we're on the wait and see because there's lockdown again. I mean, like what you've said, they have to wake up. They have to see that, this is gonna be here for a while or for a long time, or this is the way, remote working or hybrid will be here forever. Right? And it's about time for them to really realize, or see that there are actually opportunities in doing so, or in having this different way of working, right? And like my favorite one is, of course, women starting to step up, right? And like, I'm always up for women in leadership, women empowerment. That's something that excites me a lot as well, whether it's in corporate or in government or wherever you are, right? Because at the end of the day, like, there's a lot of women in this world, and it's about time for us to, to step up.
I think it's important that women step up as women. So women step into power with feminine intelligence. They don't try to step into the male perspective. They don't try to up their masculinity to take power by force. Force doesn't win. Power will always overcome force. That's a quote I learned from Peter Sage. Peter Sage is a mentor of mine, and I train EMF's courses. But men use force, they use push and threats to get things done. They might be physical, but they might be sort of just mental, sort of, you need to get this done by the end of the week. Whereas women that use their feminine intelligence, not their masculinity, they're the ones that have the power. So it's great that women are stepping up, but being allowed to step up,
Hmm.
but also they need to step into their own power,
True.
not try to step into the men that they're trying to replace. That's not helping. So you're right, but the women have to do it the right way.
Exactly. And again, I would say it's all about having that balance as well, of making use of both the masculine and the feminine energy, or the feminine and masculine, leadership capabilities. Because what's good with female is that we tend to be more nurturing, and we tend to be like, more intuitive, which is, I think, the way to go. Like, I've been, in my journey as well on self mastery, and part of it is really, like, listening to like leaders like Oprah and others, who are really, making use of their intuition of themselves, or
Yeah,
just believing in themselves, in the way they make their decisions, and what makes them happy, right? So
yeah.
anyway, so I mean, we've talked about next normal. I know that whether it's the old normal that you mentioned as well, and the new normal that we are living in, or in our future, there will always be, like, problems that corporate leaders, would be facing, right? And so, if you were to summarize the top three problems that most leaders do face, what would that be?
I remember years ago I worked for Green King in England. They run hundreds of hotels, hundreds and hundreds of fast food takeaways. It's a big organization here. They employ thousands and thousands of people. Once a year for 1 week, the board of directors goes down to one of the hotels individually, and they work in the hotel or the bar as an employee.
Wow.
And we had the director of the company come and spend a week with us, and that is so empowering for us as employees running an outlet, but also really educational for them, because they're working at the coalface. They're working with the people that are actually doing the work. You know,
Mhm.
some of these big companies, they sit in their ivory towers and they really don't know what's going on right down at the coalface. That experience with Green King is fairly unique. But that opened them up, and I think there's a lot of companies that wouldn't do that. They wouldn't have that sort of mentality. We run the company, you do the work, sort of thing, and they're going to fade out. I'm a coach. I'm a business coach, and one of the aspects of it that I also utilize is co-facilitating with horses. So I actually run coaching sessions with the horse in the arena, and the client will interact if they want to, or they don't have to. It's the way the coaching sort of is set up. But that interaction with the horse shows us who the real leaders are, not the guy with the big stick or the checkbook. It's the person that is heart centered as a leader,
Mhm.
um, and that really changes things. What was interesting was that it was only the new companies, the developing companies, the tech companies that were trying different things, and they're really proactive about going out there. And they won't be the ones sitting there saying, "Oh, we'll wait until COVID's over," or "we'll wait till we can get back to the old normal." They're already gone. They're already moving into the new normal, and they're evolving their companies. And they'll be the ones in 5 years that are here they'll be here in 5 years. I was reading yesterday about BlackBerry, which 10 years ago was the mobile phone. It was quite a big mobile phone, but it was the first smartphone to actually have. All the companies closed. It's gone. They couldn't keep up. There will be lots of companies that are stuck, that don't know or aren't willing or aren't open enough. They're not awake to actually move forward into creating their new normal. They'll wait and see what the new normal is going to be.
Mhm.
And I think so. To answer your question, I think the problem that a lot of these corporate leaders are going to have is millennials, feminine intelligence, and change. Millennials, because millennials are not going to put up with the crap that we put up with in the old normal. They want to have their own lives, lead their own lives. New Zealand is pretty much heading towards a 4-day week, which is fantastic. Okay, you've got to work a little bit longer on a 4-day week, so you do a 10-hour day, but that gives you a 3-day weekend. So it gives you the Friday or one day to actually get all the things done that normal people have to do. Little countries like New Zealand, Singapore, Iceland, Scotland, for instance, can actually do these. It's harder for big countries, and big companies to change like this. So I think the smaller companies, the smaller countries, the more dynamic new companies are going to be the ones that get ahead. They're going to have the millennials on board. They're going to have them on the board, and they're going to say, "Yeah, how does it work?" I think it's great you're seeing people with disabilities, with ADHD, with um, uh, Asperger's, actually on board of companies, because they come up with completely diverse concepts. But this will only be in the dynamic new companies. Feminine intelligence, we've already talked about that a little bit. Women are becoming more predominant in the workplace, but for me, they need to understand it. They need to use their femininity to lead, not their masculinity to lead, or they're just falling back into the same problem. I
Mhm.
think that brings up a little bit of a dichotomy there with the millennial males. Who are their role models? I spent the last 10 years in Myanmar, and I was going to quite a few networking meetings with Burmese women. And there would be one of them, we had over 100 women there. So they're networking, they're getting used to each other. This is all quite new there. I hardly ever went to one with males. Now, this is Myanmar, but this is a problem in the West as well. Women, young women, millennial women have got these role models, and there's lots of support for them, and to learn how to be leaders. Millennial males, who are their role models? Donald Trump? No. Boris Johnson? No. Um, you know, New Zealand with Jacinda Ardern is women, so the women have that role model there. So I think women moving into leadership need to recognize that millennial male group of people need the support to know what it is to be masculine. You can't just switch it off. There has to be a balance, as you were saying. And the third thing, there was change. Change is happening so fast. I was talking to somebody the other day about crypto, and he said, "Oh, this is it. This is a fantastic thing." I said, "No, it's not. It's here for a few years, and then it'll be the next thing." Gold in trading went on for millennia, and then money came along. And that's been here for a few hundred years, but now sort of, the credit card, and I used debit cards when I was back in New Zealand. So New Zealand had debit cards 40 years ago. They're not new, but now a lot of places around the world you can't spend money. You have to have a card, and now it's crypto. Well, everything's getting shorter and shorter. Change is happening so much faster. So it's like crypto, that's only got a limited time. Um, and what's the next step? So change is going to be a big problem for corporates that are too slow. Um, the smaller companies, the smaller countries can diverse change. New Zealand had a similar medical system to the NHS in the UK, and the NHS in the UK is so unwieldy, costs so much money. New Zealand had a similar system, and they realised in the 90s this is not going to work. We're not big enough to do this, so they went to a part private medical insurance, part public funded, and now they have a better balance. But that's a little country of 6 million people. They could change. England, America, that's not going to be as easy to move. So I think it might be a death knell for big companies, corporates that can't change fast enough. How's
Thank you
that?
for summarizing that for us. And again, like, being able to embrace change and like, especially that it's happening fast, as you mentioned, has always been a challenge for leaders. And obviously, we don't want to leave them with all these problems without giving them some or offering them some solutions, right? And so my next question is really like hoping to answer some of these problems in a way, because my question is, what would be the important leadership capabilities or skills that they might must have to be able to continue to lead effectively in this, new normal or next normal, however you want to call it.
These are fascinating questions. They really got me thinking about what it was. And luckily, I read this book, Legacy, about the All Blacks, and I think there's a really good lesson in there that they were using all the effort to get there, but that wasn't enough.
Mhm,
And so they went to personal development. And I think for leaders, a really big part is understanding, learning about themselves, so developing the intrapersonal skills,
mhm,
understanding who they are, what upsets them, what motivates them, um, and and I think what that does, once you start to develop an understanding of self, you start to understand the other person that you're talking to. You can't understand the other person you're talking to unless you understand yourself first. So I
mhm.
think for me, leaders that uh, show some empathy towards their employees, show empathy to other people, are the ones that understand themselves much better. Now,
Yeah.
this isn't necessarily a skill that you have to learn. Some people naturally have it. Some people are just born leaders.
Yes.
Nelson Mandela was a born leader. He had a focus. He kept to that focus. Gandhi was another one. They had an ideal, and they stuck to it. But they weren't arrogant about it. They weren't disconnected from the public about it. They were the picture I remember of Nelson Mandela was when he went onto the field, the rugby field, when South Africa won the World Cup in South Africa, and he put the shirt on, the strip on from the captain of the South African team. You know, he didn't see any colour, so he created the Rainbow Nation, or he didn't come up with the word. I think it was President Minister Tutu, but he was somebody who understood himself without learning necessarily that, but he could express that. He could interact with other people. So I think for me, one of the important things for corporate leaders, anybody, not just corporate leaders, and it's a lot of what I teach, is
Mm,
is understanding the self, that those interpersonal skills, so that then when you're communicating, and it's something that we talk about a lot. You've got two ears and one mouth. Listen twice as much as you speak, and
yes.
there's a reason for that. It's actually listening to then really understand the other person. What is it hanging? What is it that's their hang-ups? We talk about 360-degree feedback, and it doesn't work, because feedback is, well, if I say the wrong thing, then it'll go down as a mark against me in my sort of my record. So 360-degree feedback is not pointless, but it has its limitations when the leader isn't listening to what's really happening,
Mhm,
putting things together. I think some of the other things in women coming up more into board, I think into the board level, will have this effect where companies start to realize that the employees are important. Pfizer's made 36. Well, better example is Elon Musk flying to outer space, and that's really great. But he employs people on in the States, where they have to get other jobs to afford to live. So his people, that are his employees, that are working in the Amazon buildings, are struggling. But he can fly to outer space. How is that right? The shareholders are going to go, oh, he's flying to outer space, so his shares are valuable. But that still means that thousands of people that work for him are struggling to live. The shareholder is not as important as the employee. There has to be a balance. There's a reason for shareholders. I'm not saying they shouldn't be shareholders, but there needs to be more respect and appreciation of the employees in a company. There was a line out years and years ago, decades ago, the customers, the customer's always right. And that's when I first got onto Richard Branson. He goes, no, they're not. The customer's important, but they're not always right. You've got to find the solution as the employee. You need to find the solution for the customer, but they're not always right.
Yes. And again, it's all about the balance that we've been talking about as well, right? I mean, it's like
Yeah,
if you care for your stakeholder, you also have to take care of your employees the same way as they will take care of their customers, right? And I hope I have summarized it correctly in terms of what you've shared. It's again developing interpersonal skills, which is like what I've said as well earlier, and I'm glad I'm on the right track. It's really understanding of oneself, or like what I've said, I'm working on my self mastery. And then, we've been hearing a lot of these listening skills. It's important as part of a feedback, right? Because sometimes that happens, it's still one way, even if it's supposed to be a
yeah,
conversation, right?
yeah.
um, and the last one is having that balance of appreciation for employees, customers, and stakeholders all at the same time, right? And that's really key to get to where you want to be. And similar to, like, for us to have that profit, we also have to care for our planet and our people, right? People and planet and all those stuff, to have that balance. And so that I'd like to ask from you, like, I mean, we've talked about the problems, we talked about the skills, important skills, and what do you believe will be the role of learning, leadership, and transformation in order for us to thrive in this new or next normal?
I think for me, and one of the pillars of my training and my learning is understanding human needs. We're all driven by human needs, and in the old normal, and a lot of people are driven by the first four human needs. There's six human needs:
Mm-hmm.
certainty, uncertainty, significance, and connection. And these are all ego driven. They're all me against the world. We before COVID, we lived in our bubble, so everything was certain, and we strive for certainty because that's our comfort zone, where everything's certain. Of course, now COVID's come along. We've seen that was just a house of cards. Now everyone's having to face uncertainty all over the place. So and significance, what I can do to make myself a bigger person, what I can get on YouTube
Mm-hmm.
and connection, so I can connect with people. And well, these are all human needs that we drive for. They're not really supporting us as a person on a real personal level. I think the last two human needs, growth and contribution, are really the important ones. And for me, I would like to see leadership transform into this appreciation of growth. So I left school probably before you were born, but I've always been going to school somewhere. So I've always been learning. Learning is not something you finish at 18 when you finish school, or you later when you finish university. So growth is always learning. And as we were saying there, with change, it's happening so fast that you have to learn all this new stuff. And I remember when I was younger, sort of the car broke down, so you opened the bonnet and you sort of played around with spark plugs and leads and carburetors and things like that. Now I just trust if it stops, I have to take it to the garage and he doesn't know what's happening. He just gets his computer out and plugs it in. I don't need to learn that now. I need to move on, learn something else. So learning and that growth, and it's we're all on a journey, and that growth is helping me evolve as a person. Contribution is where I'm sort of helping society. I'm contributing in some way to society so that we grow together. This is all sounding a bit woo woo, isn't it? It's not supposed to contribute. I mean, if I'm eating lots of meat, I'm not contributing to the environment. I'm taking away from the environment. If I'm flying overseas once a year for my holidays, that's not good for the environment either. So how can I, as an individual, impact on the planet? How can I impact on the people around me socially? As a leader, I can take that step forward, and how can I help the employees to learn, to grow? I think Richard Branson says it really well. You
Yes.
treat people to stay, teach them to leave, because people won't stay unless they feel comfortable, unless they're being supported, unless they're being given that scope. They'll leave. I think one of the big problems that companies had was, and I worked for one in Myanmar. They decide they have to downsize, so they go for the first thing is voluntary redundancy. And the first people that leave are the ones that you need to stay. The ones doing all the work are the ones that are dynamic, proactive, and they leave. Then you're stuck with the ones that couldn't get a job or don't want to get a job, and they're not really performing at that level. So voluntary redundancy doesn't really work. It's a way of getting rid of some numbers, but the work actually. And so, yeah, leadership, it's about looking after the employees. So training them to lead, but treating them to stay, giving them that support. And then contributing is not just about training, it's actually about contributing to the well-being of your employees. And a lot of this stuff, you can't go out and ask employees. You've actually got to understand. So this is coming back to the intrapersonal skills, evolving and developing yourself, your own skills, and your own. It's what I said at the start. It's stopping and smelling the roses. It's really listening to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's only when you listen to yourself you can then listen and hear other people. And I go further and say listening. It's active listening. It's seeking to understand. What did he say? Seek first to understand, and then be understood. That's really important.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I mean, at least we have the same we believe in the same things of, the importance of having growth, not only as a leader in a corporation, but as an individual. I mean, we're all
Yeah,
leaders after all, right? And being
absolutely.
able to grow ourselves is the best way for us to be able to look or to see the opportunities around us, and at the same time for us to be able to really grow, in many ways, right? Not only as an employee, could be as a business owner. And like what you've said, you don't really stop learning. I mean, not because you're done with your university or your college does that mean that you will stop on learning. There's always a lot of opportunity for us to learn. And what I would say, like you've mentioned about COVID-19, and again, that one of the silver linings that it has really brought to us is really to have that reflection, to appreciate more, and at the same time to be grateful and to look into that, oh yeah, we're working with humans. And it's important to satisfy
Absolutely.
the needs. And also, and part of that is, like what you mentioned as the most important, which is growth and contribution, but it also like gives us um, the a reminder that, hey, there's it's important to have the well-being as well, because sometimes, some leaders just focus a lot on the profitability, productivity, and they don't even think like, are they okay, are they, doing well, um are they feeling well, or some, like if someone died in their family, should we just give them a rest first, instead of just looking into just productivity and profitability all the time, right? So yeah, thank you so much for giving that summary. And it's all about, again, like what you've said, humans have not changed a lot in the last how many years, probably million years. We're still the same. It's still satisfying our human needs, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So and I'm curious to know, I mean, I'm loving our conversation with all the, you know self-awareness, loving oneself and being more intuitive about you learning, growth, contribution, and all those stuff that we have been, talking about in terms of leadership. So I'm just curious to know, if you have a magic wand that you can use, what will you do with it?
I wish I did have a magic wand. I think for me, a lot of this has come on the interpersonal learning the interpersonal skills is because we've become so divorced from it. We're in a capitalist world where it's dog eat dog. You've got to fight whether you're the leader or the employee, and it's stepping back and trying to change the environment so that we can all be more comfortable. I was going to say, more than 60% of people are in hospital because of lifestyle choices,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be smoking or drinking, but it can also be stress.
True.
And why did I go into a company and start this company, or why am I the vice president of this company? And unless I like what I'm doing, if I end up having a heart attack at 55, what's the point? I haven't really enjoyed life. I mean, how many people sort of, work their asses off all their lives, get to 60, I can live, but they actually, the health is screwed. So they've worked their whole lives to get to that point, and then there comes the point to enjoy it. And this is where the millennials have got it right. They're saying, I'm not going to work my ass off and kill myself by the time I'm 60 to then give my money to my children, which is great, but shouldn't you live life? I want to be the guy that slides into the grave on the back of a motorbike, not just quietly disappears somewhere into the mist. So if I had a magic wand, and I think the leading problem here is capitalism, I'd remove money. You weren't expecting that one, were you? If I had a magic wand, I would remove money. Capitalism in its essence I think is right. I think it works, but I think now we've gone too far. When Elon Musk can fly out to outer space, but most of his people still can't, put food on the table. That's not right. Um, So yeah, if I had a magic wand, I'd remove money. A little bit like if you watch Star Trek, there's no money involved. Everybody has a job to do. They're performing. They figure out what they want to do on the starship, and and it's all supplied for them. The houses, our basic needs are automatically supplied. Food, shelter, they're looked after. They're protected. They can graduate up. They don't have money. Money creates this dichotomy between the haves and the have-nots. And the problem with COVID is that shareholders of Pfizer are laughing all the way to the bank because their shares have rocketed. But you and me have paid all this money. I can't go overseas because I'd have to spend weeks in quarantine. It would cost me an incredible amount of money. A friend of mine just flew from Australia to Brazil. It cost $18,000.
Wow.
I don't know about you, but I can't afford that because I'm not a Pfizer shareholder. So yeah, I'd remove money.
That's very interesting insight. I mean, you saw my face. I was surprised, like, oh, okay, that's interesting. That's
So
an
yes,
interesting way of using your magic wand. But
I'm not going
again,
to waste my magic wand.
so yeah, it's very interesting, and sometimes it could be conflicting as well, because again, like, it depends on, like, the people who are actually handling the money. And for me, like in my case, I would see that money is just like a byproduct that you have actually served enough people, and that sometimes we can also see that um when you need to help like people, you needed to have like more of it, right? So that you can actually facilitate that. But it's interesting, I know where you're coming from as well. Like, I've been like reflecting and contemplating about, like, how we are actually provided, um just being us. I mean, just for being, right? And it's interesting that they said that, you are here in this world to fulfill a specific purpose or a role in life. So no matter, like, where you are now or what you are doing, it seems to, like, I've seen a lot of people who are very faithful or very close to God, if I may, use that word. And it seems like everything is provided for them, even without so much money, like things or food or whatever that they need actually comes into their life. So that's very interesting. You know, use of one, I would say. So that
You only
leads.
gave me one. You only gave me one magic wand. I could only have one thing, so it had to be big.
Yes, yes, of course. And it's interesting. I mean, I hear you. I know where you're coming from as well. And yeah. So it's very interesting though. Yeah. So I mean, you've shared with us like how did you actually came up with that thought process of why you've actually chose that wish for us even before you mentioned the actual wish. But it's interesting. I was actually typing something else when you finally said, "Oh, this is what I'm gonna do." Okay, I took it differently initially, just to be exact. So anyway, so that leads me to my last question to you, that if you were to ask yourself a question that you can best answer, what would it be? And if you'd like to share with us why as well, feel free to, to share with us.
If I could ask myself a question, what would it be? We
Mm-hmm.
talked a lot about the new normal, the old normal,
Mm-hmm.
what that's going to be, and we don't know what it is, so we can create it. What leaders should do, women need to, in my opinion, need to take their feminine intelligence into the workplace, not try and compete on a masculine level. And it all comes down to the interpersonal skills, understanding yourself. I started NLP over 20 years ago, so I'm quite familiar with NLP. I'm a master practitioner.
Oh.
Um, uh, and I was quite lucky. I moved from NLP into clean language. Clean language is not using bad words. It's actually a technique that I use to really get to the unconscious understandings of my clients, or when I'm doing it in a group. So if I was asked to ask myself a question, it would be, how can I support people's journeys through? Because it's a journey. You don't go to the doctors and get a red pill and cure it, unless you're in the matrix. You get a red pill, it's cured, but of course we aren't in the matrix. But are we? It's a journey. So how can I put people on? And that's been a search that I've been on for many years. How can I help people, support people, get onto that journey, through that journey? This is not something, you're not going to go to a Tony Robbins course over a weekend and suddenly have this epiphany and change your life. Now, one or two people do. I sort of got to the firewalk and thought, I'm not doing this. And I've actually set up firewalks myself now. But that was part of my journey. So how can I help people on that journey, not just a one weekend here? And I was really lucky to do my NLP. A guy turned up at the one of our NLP conferences to introduce me to clean language, and from that we evolved something called emergent knowledge. This is where, and I used a horse, co-facilitate with a horse to do this work. And the problem that I always had was that was incredibly deep work that I was doing. I would be working with people with abuse, with PTSD, um, because we all have traumas, however big and small they are, and a lot of coaching is forward focused. What's my goal? What's my vision? Um, you can't go forwards unless you deal with the stuff behind you, the emotions tied up in the events that happen. You've got to deal with the stuff. Most of us have it behind us. Um, and I was really lucky enough to run into Peter Sage a few months ago, years ago actually. But I've now sort of come together, and he has the best package that I've seen that actually puts people on journeys. And it's a 6 month course that I actually facilitate this course now, and that runs through all these different aspects. It brings in some of the aspects of NLP into it. It allows me to bring in some of my stuff. But yeah, for me, if the answer to my question is this course that I've run into, and thank goodness I have, because as I said, I've done lots of different things over the last 2 decades. This is the first course that brings it all together. And I think one of the big parts of it is that it's a course, but I also run weekly live Q&A sessions. It creates peer group. And I think we haven't talked about peer groups. For me, wherever you are, whether you're a stay-at-home parent, or you're an employee, or you're the leader of a corporation, it's the peer group. You're only going to rise to the level of the people around you. And
Exactly.
unfortunately, we're stuck in a job, and we'll rise to the people around us. And if you're sitting in England, you talk about the weather all the time, or the football. That's the level you're going to rise to. This because it's a 6 month course and it's in groups of 10 or 20 people, they become my peer group. So I have a peer group I meet with on two on Friday actually, but they've been going for over a year. So it becomes a mastermind group for me. It
Yes.
becomes a group that I can share things on a deeper level. Now, this is in my environment is a corporate leader. I could do the same thing with other corporate leaders to share experiences. If I'm a sports person, I could have a rugby player, a cricket player, a volleyball player, a netball player, and it's not the content of it; it's the experiences that the peer group can can bring. Evolving peer groups is really at the top of my list of things I try to work with people to support them, to help them get into these groups,
Mhm.
because life's going to happen, reality is going to happen, your peer group is going to happen. Life, we don't take control of it. How many of us sort of stumble through life asleep? Things come up, we finish university, we get married, we get a promotion, we change jobs, and we wake up at 40 and go, is and have a midlife crisis. Is this all there is? And then we jump from one fry pan into another fry pan. Nothing really changes. The environment doesn't really change. I noticed this years ago. I left home, and so there's still a pool of people back in New Zealand. And me and my brother left home at the same time, and he travelled to different places around the world. And we used to go back every 12 months or every 2 years. And that peer group they hadn't really changed because the environment for them hadn't changed. They might have changed partners, changed jobs, but really nothing had changed. And over the years, sort of 4, 5, 6 years, we sort of started to lose contact because I sort of, this is what's happening in France, and this is what we're doing. And my environment was changing all the time. And I was evolving and learning, not always good. Working in boating in my life's been sort of, it's a bit like this. It's up and down and up and down. Most people sort of go through life and it's sort of like, it's sort of like this. It has its ups and downs. But their environment didn't change. The peer group that they were in was all the same. All they could talk about was the weather and the football. Um, so I think peer groups are really important. So for
Sure.
me, finding this course, so how can I, and this, as I said, something I've been looking at for many years was how to support people on that journey. And this Elite Mentorship Forum is the first course that I've found that incorporates lots of different things into a package, includes a peer group in it, and you do this course is 6 months. But at the end of it, you've still got the peer group. So the group that I have on Friday, we've done the 6 month course, finished that in October, and we're starting it as a group again. So this isn't something that's costing us any money. It costs us time, but as a peer group, we're supporting each other and changing as a person. And it's really fascinating. One of the best parts of my life, I suppose, is when you see people change, evolve.
Sure.
Um, and it's mostly because of the internal work they're doing. Yes, they can change jobs,
Yes. True.
but it's the internal evolution. So if I could have another wand, I would encourage people to find a peer group. It's not easy to find a peer group. The
True.
internet, these sort of programs, Zoom and StreamYard and that is supporting Clubhouse is supporting the evolution of peer groups. But you can go so much more forward. You can get so much more support from a positive support group, a positive peer group.
Yeah.
A drug addict, a drug addict that you take out of the environment and you cure them, or not cure them, but you get them over, you get them off the drug that they're on. If they go back to their environment, if they go back to that peer group, they will invariably end up back as an addict. If you support them, change them, get them over the addiction they've got, and then put them into a supportive peer group,
Hmm.
then they have more chance of becoming ending up with a more stable life.
Wow, yes, that's very true. And I love that you shared that with us. I mean, we're in the same journey on how we can actually support as much people or leaders to this journey. And again, it's not an overnight thing, right? And that's why, and I'm really grateful for the, the opportunity, the projects, and the experiments that I have done during the COVID-19 as well, where we were from just doing live things. Now we've seen like how gamification, masterminds, peer groups, and evolve and work together with communities, and how this journey are actually important to really have that shift or have that change within someone's life, right? And then it doesn't matter whether you're in a corporate world or on a business level, like we are, like entrepreneurs, where we do a lot of things on our own. But having that community, and I'm so blessed that I have like a huge network of amazing people that I can work with, and at the same time, I can be part of community. I mean, we are in the same Kane and Alesha's community as well.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's important that we surround ourselves with the right people, and people that who would like to evolve as well. It's important in that journey. So thank you for sharing that with us, John. So, wow, we're having like an amazing conversation. We passed 1 hour already, but before we end this session, I'd like to thank Karen for giving us a thumbs up, and oh, another Karen. So we have Karen Fung and Karen Frederick. Okay, so that's two different Karens, right? Okay. So thank you so much for liking and giving us a heart. And I appreciate you for joining us in this session. And again, John, thank you so much for your time, for all the learning, and for sharing with us your insights from that over 30 years of experience, I would say, um, in your journey moving around the world, and working with people on their journey to self, and enlightening as well others on that journey. So thank you so much for this really very, I would say, very somehow spiritual conversation, and the importance of around self-reflection and self-mastery. So thank you so much for that. And thank you also everyone for watching us, and for those who will watch us in a replay. And again, join us in this journey to create opportunities through several interventions, and also create a world that is full of opportunities that we believe in. And remember that even the richest investors in the world say that investing in yourself is the best investment you can ever make in your life. So, with that, we would like to leave you with this quote from Dolly Parton, that if your action creates a legacy that inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are an excellent leader. Thank you so much, John. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye
you.
for
Thank you
now.
for inviting me.
You're welcome. And thanks
Bye.
again, Juliet. I just showed Juliet. Thank you for sharing your expertise, John. I'm a Kiwi living in Sydney. Appreciate your time. Thank you, Juliet, and thank you for watching us. So bye for now.